last couple of weeks, this kind of state of cloud that we're seeing now as part of the team, and the kind of differences between what we were expecting to see in the market versus what is actually out there, that multi-cloud adoption versus the private cloud that we'd expect to see quite prevalent in our environments.
730 organisations studied in that report, 500 enterprise, 250 odd SMB, same challenges both sides. That's what surprised me the most. I'm working with organisations on a daily basis and seeing that actually multi-cloud is winning more than I'd expect it to. And what you actually throw into that multi-cloud is private cloud. Like, people forget that just because it's on premises doesn't mean it's not cloud.
Yeah, cloud is just tin in somebody else's back garden, right? It's the way I look at it is when we start talking about cloud, it's the same services. We've kind of modernised to applications first, or we're looking at how we do things like EC2 instances in AWS or IaaS in Azure. It's the same products, just with a different label and a wraparound on them. So for me, it's some of the discussions we should be having is cloud where appropriate, but it's the discussion of whether it's going to be that hyperscaler or if it's on-premise.
Exactly. That putting your workloads in the right areas to gain the right advantages for your organisation.
And I think when we start looking at SMBs and we look at enterprises, I think the more we need to look at is that FinOps piece. Is how are we optimising the cost? How are we getting the best out of that product? Because when we look at a small business and we start looking at things like backup, for instance, we might be looking at $10 a month on one or two VMs. That, to a small organisation, isn't much to worry about. But we start scaling out to tens of thousands of VMs, and we've got that slight increase in cost there. We're talking millions in some cases.
Yep.
So it's understanding what you've got, what's deployed, and how we make that work better for organisations. And that ties nicely into that kind of multi-cloud piece where we've got that private piece alongside those other hyperscalers, because we can then do appropriate costs where needed. So are we doing a dev workload that can be run on premise? We can look at HCI. Or are we going to be looking at, we've got a team of engineers and we want to move to cloud quite quickly because we've got doing a data center evac in our office. Do we want to look at AVS? Or have you got the time to look at how we modernise? Let's not just lift and shift bits of tin into cloud. Let's look at that modernisation piece. Let's look at how we're going to use things like containerisation, web applications, and make those work and make the better investments so that FinOps piece can actually turn around a better profit and better margin on what we're working with.
And so many organisations take on the cloud because they need to. They need to exit their data centre, they've got a licensing pinch, whatever it might be, and then they don't move from where they are. And if they choose to modernise,
yeah, you can't, you force that hand, don't you?
Exactly. You force your hand into better FinOps, cost optimised environments, but also just cost optimised that you forget about. It's not a raw bill cost anymore.
Exactly.
What about your SQL team that can now do different work because they're not having to manage the day-to-day of managing the SQL environment because now they've modernised it?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether it's Stack HCI or if it's in the cloud or if it's we've completely modernised it. We've changed what we're doing. We're not using the same flavour of SQL anymore. It doesn't matter, but you can free up that work time, which is also part of a FinOps strategy.
Yeah, and I like those kind of conversations because one of the things we have been looking at is SQL analytics. So moving that kind of stateful workload into a container, being able to run that alongside products like Portworx, where we've got that stateful storage underneath, and we can do really great things with it. And what, like you said, is we're now, when we're looking at our DBAs or we're looking at our engineers and devs, we're not trying to spin up products or order hardware that would have taken us weeks, months, even years in some cases. When we start looking at AI and we start looking at graphics cards, we can now turn that on, have access to it, and turn it off if that project doesn't work. We can easily see that kind of the investment wins versus our traditional kind of infrastructure background like we used to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think what's really exciting about this time period coming forwards is we're going to explore in depth those options rather than just the surface level.
Exactly.
Really help organisations understand how they can gain more value out of those solutions that are available to them, whether it's Stack HCI, whether it's AVS, or whether it's that complete modernisation outlook.